to the Lit Chicks podcast. We are Ellen Humphrey.
Hello.
Shannon Reber, and I am Susan Landrigan. And we are coming to you from the Innovation Studio at Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield, New York.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about how we name our characters.
Really interesting subject we love to talk about.
We do, we really do. Okay, so now hold on a second. This is the book that you are working on now is the first one where you've actually chosen names, isn't it? Or,
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. And so how's that going? You've got all the names chosen, right?
I've got all the names chosen.
Okay.
And some of them I had to look up different names.
Yeah.
You know, I looked in a list of names, and the family is going to be Italian or
Okay.
Mexican. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So I needed Italian names, Mexican names, and which I looked up.
Mhm.
And one name in particular was a character who was always in a bad mood, and she had dark hair, so I named her Ebony,
I love that.
Oh,
meaning dark.
meaning dark. Okay.
I like that a lot. I always choose names for their definitions, and I tend to use white for good guys and black for bad guys, just because the yin and the yang, is that right? I mean, it's not exactly
Yeah.
good and evil, but
Yeah.
it's basically where I get the idea from. But that's how I used to do it. Now I'm running out of names.
So where do you go to find your names?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Google. Sometimes I Google it. There's a site called Behind the Names. So it even has a surname. So you can look up a surname. You can look up either the ethnicity, like German, African, whatever you need, and you can also choose by meanings, and it's spectacular. So if you ever look at one of my books, look up the names and just see what you find out about my characters.
So I wonder how, think about how many times you've read a book in a name that was different, that you'd never heard before.
I love that.
And then somehow, if that book's really popular,
Yeah.
the name pops up everywhere. People start naming their children after them. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They do that for TV shows too.
yeah, I kind of did that with my daughter. She doesn't know this, but
Now she
I
does.
heard the name Jessica, and I had never heard it before. There was Jennifer's, and there was Lorraine's, and all these other names, but I had never heard the name Jessica, and I just thought it was a beautiful name. And so when she was born, I decided that would be her name.
That is.
And then
a good
after
one.
that, they're everywhere. I
Yeah,
mean,
of course,
I know
of course.
a dozen Jessicas now, besides my daughter. It's all around us. But at that time,
Yeah,
there
yeah.
wasn't. And I do
That's
believe it was
awesome.
I don't know, some kind of a soap opera or something that had a character with that name.
You know what? I think you're right. But I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, whatever. But it really. But it is amazing how TV shows even influence the way people do it. Like my husband told me there is a lot of women named Jamie from the early '80s, I believe, because of
Bionic
Jamie,
Woman.
the Bionic Woman,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Jamie Summers. Yep.
Jamie Summers,
Yep.
yeah, that's
So-
true. I always watched it. She was a hero for women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, watching that now, there is no special effects. They do slow-mo for everything. So once you hear the noise,
it's always
that's
slow.
when, yeah, exactly.
Your mind takes over, which is really interesting because as readers, we do that in
Yeah,
books.
it's true,
You
it's
know,
true.
we're reading words, they don't move very fast, right?
That's
but
true.
our mind fills in those pieces that aren't in the written on the page.
That's true.
Well, we're kind of spoiled now because back when I started writing, I didn't have the internet.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
And so what I did is I pulled out baby name books.
I love that.
And
yes.
there's boys' names and girls' names, and there's by different nationalities and ethnicities and all that sort of stuff. And that I would spend hours and hours looking for what's the name of my character.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
As a teenager, I actually spent more time in the library looking at baby name books than anything else. Because they were always large print, and I loved names. So,
Yeah,
So that you could name your cats.
I never got to name my cats. I always came
They always
pre-named.
came with names.
Yeah.
Well, Well, mine don't have very creative names. You know, baby cat, mama cat.
Oh, that's pretty cute, actually.
Yeah, well, except for Honey. I think I told you why I named my cat Honey, right?
Okay. Yes.
Do you want me to tell you
Yes,
again?
I think you should.
Well, I have these very wonderful grandsons, and so I said, why do you think Meme named her cat Honey? And they said, why, Meme? And I said, so when I come home and open the door, I can say, hi, honey, I'm home.
I love that.
Yeah, it is true, but anyway. Yeah.
I like that.
And sometimes I think you pick the names for your characters and it kind of inspires you. Like
Yeah.
I have a character in one of my novels named Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a long time about her name. And I wanted it to be something that showed a strong protagonist
Right.
who basically saves the day.
Right, yeah.
She's victorious. And that kind of flowed through as I wrote the story as
I
well.
love that, yeah.
Yeah, and I recycled it. I used it in another story later on, many years, decades later. I forgot I had recycled it.
Oh, okay. See, I found that the name Nicholas means victory as well. So you can, every derivation of the name, and even surnames, it still means victory. And so, like Nichols, Nicholson, they all mean victory. And the name Neil means champion. And so the Nelson, the last name, it's son of Neil.
Wow.
So these are things that I learned
Well, I'm
through my
currently,
writing career.
I'm currently working on a book about trees, right?
Yes,
And,
yes,
and I
yes.
love trees. I don't hesitate to say I'm a little flaky, so I like trees. And I like to
Aren't we all?
hug, and I like to hug trees, right? I have pictures of me with big trees and little trees. And so I have characters in my new story that I'm working on that are trees.
Okay.
And these trees are really entities. They're not just
Right.
trees, they're entities. So I'm trying to think of how can I come up with the right name for a tree? Because it can't just be a human name. It needs to be a tree name.
Right.
It needs to be something that goes along with it. So, you know, there are two kinds of trees. There's deciduous trees, which are hardwoods, and then there's conifers, the evergreen trees.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking maybe Sid could be a name.
That's
I
perfect.
don't know, Connie, maybe.
I love that.
I haven't decided, but-
absolutely love that.
It's kind of a secret code the writer knows, and will some readers pick it up? Maybe.
Sometimes.
What about fern?
Oh,
Fern.
fern is
Oh,
such a
yeah.
fun one. I love
It's
that.
not a tree, but
Well, kind
It's
of
plant.
fern
Yeah,
is part of
exactly.
it. It's like that kind of, you know how pine trees and fir trees have these growths of, well, not leaves, but they're kind of fern-like. So I think that's what that's referring to. So yeah,
I
that
like
could be.
it.
I like it. Well, it's
That's
inspiring me to write more in my stories.
We had let's see, what was it? Last night we went to a book event and we were talking to a friend about the way that she chose the way her story would go, and that is just as inspiring as names for me. But oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. This is ridiculous.
Well, when she said have no, right?
Right, exactly.
Have no's.
Have
but
no's, not
yeah.
just yeses.
Have lots of no's, and I hadn't really
that was a good
you know,
point.
It was
thought
a
of
very
that
good point.
consciously.
Yeah.
But it is true because you want to have obstacles, you want to have
It's
challenges, and so if you knock on the door and someone's chasing me, can I come in? And the person slams the door and says no.
I love
It's
that.
a lot more interesting than oh sure, come in, I'll hide you in the closet. You know.
It is.
Yeah, so I think talking with other writers about their process really inspires you and
I think
helps
it's
you
true.
hone your skills
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Sometimes writers' conferences can produce that.
Okay.
Or there's so many online courses now that you can just sit at your home and zoom into that,
Exactly.
that you can hear about.
Neil
the process.
Gaiman does those a lot, and I want to do one of his webinars or whatever it is. I want to very much because he's awesome.
There was a really interesting book written several years ago called Start with Yes.
Okay.
So when she said start with no, I thought of the start with yes. Of course,
Okay.
that's how my brain works. But that was a different concept. That was the idea that yes, I can, or yes, it will, or if you're doing something, whether it's in business, writing, or your personal life, like you know me, I like to create these challenges like putting down a floor. Yes, I can.
Yes, you
know?
can. Yes, you
Start
can.
with yes. and work from there. And I think that's true with novel writing.
I think you're right. Yes.
She also mentioned how she wrote a lot of first chapters.
Yes.
I know so many writers who've done that. They write fabulous first chapters, and they read it to your writers group, and you're like, oh, we can't wait for the rest of it. And 20 times later, from her first chapters, they're all first chapters.
Yeah.
And you never get that whole book. So,
Right.
So yes, I can write a whole book.
Yes.
If you can write a first chapter that's wonderful, then you can write chapter 2
It's
and
true.
3 and 4. But there's something daunting about a whole book.
It's true.
That-
It is true.
Once you've done it, right?
You know this feeling, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a term called hitting the wall, which is used a lot with runners. Hitting the wall. So
Yeah.
you're running a
Yep.
race, and halfway through you're like, oh, my body is dead. I can't go another step.
Yep.
Well, the same thing happens with writing a book. A
It's
lot of
true.
times you
It's
get like
true.
in the middle,
Right.
that wading into the middle part, which is, and you kind of hit the wall.
Right.
If you can get past that a little bit, then you get your speed back and you finish the race or you finish the book. So, starting with no is a good one, but also starting with yes.
It's true.
And
It's
yes,
true.
we've gotten off topic of
I'm sorry I did that. It
I know,
just
it's
popped
okay.
into my head
It's
and I
all
had
right.
to say it.
It's still
It took me a
important.
while to get it out of my mouth,
Yeah.
but I had to say it.
What if you had a character named Yes and a character named No? And a
I
short
like
story.
it,
Okay,
yes.
I'm going to go home and write.
A short story with yes and no. I like it a lot.
Well, that is an important thing that I will share is experimental writing.
Okay.
Experiment with what you write. So if you write
Okay.
always nonfiction, pick some kind of fiction to write
Right.
and do it as a short story so you
Right.
don't overwhelm yourself. And I started doing this 30 years ago, and I discovered I loved a certain kind of writing. I would call it like Twilight Zone.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The little metaphysical or whatever that is. And it gives you the ability to sample.
Exactly.
Smorgasbord sample. Try some memoir, try some science fiction, try some mystery. I told you, I didn't tell you, but I'll tell you now. I had a mystery. I decided to write a mystery, and the mystery is about this character named Phil. And Phil solves all these problems through the whole story. Phil is just the greatest detective you ever saw. And the very last line, you realize it's Phyllis. And
I like that a lot.
So it was an experiment. It wasn't, going to win any awards, but it was fun to do.
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
playing with
Right.
with the art that you're doing, because writing
That's
isn't
very
art. You're
right.
playing with it.
Exactly. And that's
Think of
fun.
an artist with paint, playing with colors, or a musician playing with the notes, and writers do the same thing with words.
The name Phil
Yes.
means lover of horses. Just FYI.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
did not know that.
Now you do.
Wow. Yeah, Phil is interesting because Phyllis, but there's also, I have a cousin named Phildora.
Oh,
It's
that
an
is
old
an
name. Now,
interesting
she would
name.
be
Yeah.
over 100 if she was still alive. But,
Okay.
So Phildora and her husband Reginald were married for like 70-some years.
Okay.
And they just adored each other. They're my model of
That's
a
amazing.
couple that's just incredible. They were true soulmates.
That's
and
fabulous,
even
yeah.
in their 90s, they were like, you could tell they connected. They came in a room and they were just, it was inspiring.
It's rare these days.
It
is,
really
it
is.
is.
Yes, it's true.
It was truly inspirational. And they, both lived well into their late 90s.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they did a lot of cruise ships and stuff like that. I couldn't believe it, but they were very active. And he's the one who helped me do my Humphrey family history.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's a lot of names. You can
It
go
really
back
is,
to your
yes.
ancestral tree, and you'll find all kinds of names that, like,
Yeah.
like Helena.
Yeah.
Helena Merriman is one of my ancestors. And the lady who Mercy Otis Warren, who wrote the first
that's
history
amazing.
of the American
That's
Revolution. So lots of
very cool.
interesting things you can do with names.
Definitely.
Well, why don't we move on to the word for the day?
Ooh, okay.
Sounds good.
And our word for the day today is shenanigans.
That's my favorite word.
Secret or dishonest activity or maneuvering. A devious trick used especially for an underhanded purpose.
That is not what I thought that word meant.
I didn't think that's what it meant either. I thought it
I
was
still
just
of it.
playing tricks.
I always thought of it, kind of like
Same
a
here.
pranking or
Yeah.
good-natured humor or, sort of teasing.
I'm going to keep it as good because I
Yeah.
just think it's a great word.
I like that word, but I didn't know that it was dishonest or devious.
It almost sounds like a name, Shannon.
It does. Shenanigan.
Yeah.
You may call me Shenanigan for the rest of the podcast.
Okay, shenanigans. What shenanigans are you up to?
Writing words.
Well, thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to your feedback if you have any. And we'll see you next week.
Happy writing.
I don't know.